My name is Muhamed Toci. I come from Macedonia, from an NGO Mesečna, which has worked for 19 years, and it has also worked with young people. During our work yesterday and also this morning, we could hear quite a few things concerning the education. Now, as to the situation in Macedonia, I'm not saying that the young people in Macedonia have no problems. They have them, but we are trying to make sure that young people live normal lives and that they do not get married at a very early age. A couple of years ago, Macedonia adopted some legislation whereby secondary education became mandatory. So the decade can initiate an activity whereby every country involved in the decade would do something similar to what has been done in Macedonia, that is, make secondary education mandatory. In this way, the young people who also need to be provided with different types of assistance because secondary education is mandatory, these young people will then get an education, and at the same time this will keep them away from getting married too soon. Now, we are aware that it's been only a couple of years that this has been implemented in Macedonia, and we also have many problems concerning segregation in the education in Macedonia, also multiple discrimination and so on. Everything I've just heard about the youth strategy I liked, but possibly the organizations working with the young Roma should put more effort into different campaigns so that we can learn more about the plans on what they hope to do in different countries participating in the decade. If I weren't here today, I wouldn't even know that there was a youth strategy at such a high level. My name is Tin Gazivoda. I'm an advisor of the Foundation Open Society for Croatia. Just one remark concerning the position that young people are often more tolerant, more open, that it's easier to work with them, and that it's easier to work through them to change the situation in the society. I believe that this is generally true. There are also studies proving this, but also there are studies in Croatia that indicate that in Croatia and in other post-conflict societies, the situation is not all that simple, so that the general population of young people who've been through the horrors of the war and who've then been educated in schools with textbooks that did not really promote tolerance, all of this has left certain marks. So, for example, we have a Gong study made in 2010, which shows that the attitudes of young people towards other groups is not all that tolerant. So we are talking about attitudes of the majority groups towards certain other groups, especially in the context of Eastern Slavonia, for example, the attitude of young people towards ethnic minorities and so on. So maybe Duško has some experience in this. I would like to know what is the impact of all of this on your work with young Roma, and what is the relationship between the young Roma and the majority community, Serbian community in Eastern Slavonia. So the environment there, I'm sure, is much more complex and much more difficult if you are trying to change certain things. So maybe we should bear in mind that in post-conflict societies, things are even more complex. Thank you very much for this question. Well, I can quickly say that Baranja was occupied during the Croatian Homeland War, and the army of Republic of Serbia was present in Baranja. After 1997, after the beginning of the peaceful reintegration, we started with different cultural events which were initiated by the Roma, because this was an opportunity. Everybody seems to like Romani music, so we organized this and we wanted to bring together Croats, Serbs, Roma and Hungarians, and we've managed to do that. We managed to bring together over 500 people. So what we do in our association, we bring together socially jeopardized or socially vulnerable children, Romani children, and sometimes people don't even care about what we are doing, and because they want to stay separated from other groups. And we still have the problem of cafes which are strictly separated, similar to what is happening in Vukovar. You have Croatian cafes and Serbian cafes, and we have that in Baranja too. And we know that the politics becomes important even for the field of culture and even for the field of sports, and it sort of butts in. So we simply cannot overcome this on our own. We need assistance of all the relevant institutions. I wish we didn't have these problems, because whenever anybody organizes anything, be it Croats or Serbs, the other group will not attend. And this is a problem. When we organize an event, still most people come to it.
I just have a short comment. So it really depends on, of course, what you said. It's quite correct, but it depends on how do you mobilize young people. You can mobilize them for extreme right movements, but you can also mobilize them for very liberal movements. And I strongly believe that there are many young people who still believe in liberal movements and can contribute to high percentage on this kind of integration and intercultural dialogue. Doesn't matter whether it's in the Balkans or in Central Europe, Western Europe.
Thank you. Thank you, Orhan. Thank you, Rui, for the presentation, and Duško as well. In fact, I don't really have a comment on, because in general lines, I do agree with what you already mentioned, but I would like to then put the floor, I don't know how much time we have, into the governmental representative and see their views, how they see what they can contribute to Roma Youth Action Plan, or do they have a youth component in their plans? And by this also, I would like to thank also the Croatian government, who was the first to introduce the youth dimension in the Decade Action Plan. My name, for the people who doesn't know, it's Adriatica Santari. It happened also that I represent Trnipe International Roma Youth Network here as well.
Given that we've overstepped the time allotted to us. We can only take one final question. Thank you. My name is Ramiza Mehmedi. I'm president of the Romani Women Association Better Future. I've heard that there is a strategy, and I'm very pleased to hear that there is a higher level strategy for the youth. I've heard that in Macedonia they decided that secondary education will be mandatory. That's great. But what can you do if you have mandatory primary school, but children drop out already in the first, second, or third grade? So they never get to the secondary school because they drop out from the primary school. Somebody said here that that we should consider whether the Roma youth even exists. And this really is a question, because very often they go from childhood to having serious family responsibilities. So we need to design certain very serious steps to overcome this. Even in Croatian strategies, there are some excellent ideas, but unfortunately they are not being implemented. Very often it's simply a dead letter. So given that this higher level strategy does exist, we should try to promote it. We should explain the goals, and we have to involve the youth from Croatia, for example. It hasn't been mentioned whether youth have been involved in developing that strategy, youth from Croatia, for example. So we need to, first of all, stabilize the situation and make sure that girls, that children, and especially girls, complete primary school and not get married at the age of 14. Well, I can simply go back to what Mr. Orhan said. He said that Croatia was represented in Istanbul when this strategy was developed. So we are at the very end of our session, so I will simply draw some very quick conclusions. So the I would just like to say that there are some processes that need to be monitored. Well, yes, there is this passage from childhood to the adulthood, to the family responsibility, but there is another process. International organizations do not seem to be able to find capable young people in our countries. Very often it happens that a youngster from Croatia, Macedonia, or Spain applies for a competition and provides ample documentation proving their capacity, but they get a response from international organizations that they are overqualified for certain positions. So there is also this threat. There is a high number of young people who never get to the positions that they deserve. People seem not to be able to recognize them, starting from the Council of Europe to FERIP. We're talking about decades of young Roma not being accepted. And if you have one Roma that has only enrolled to the faculty, then again, all of a sudden, international organizations take them in, show them as an example, give them, burden them with administrative work, and they never manage to finish their school. They get destroyed. So I apologize for taking the floor from the booth, but this is something that you need to take care of when you design your strategies. Thank you very much, Latif. I'm very pleased to see that there are more comments or questions, but we really do need to bring this session to a close.
1 or 2 words. I think there were very relevant comments. I appreciate the last comment from the speaker, because especially to address the Council of Europe. I should just say that we do find very qualified young Roma across Europe for our activities. The difficulty is that we do not have enough resources for all the people interested. So we're having, for example, a training course in 1 month's time in Budapest. We have 300 applications for 28 places. So obviously we cannot take everybody. That's very sad. Our hope, and that's also I think part of the intention with the action plan, is that these people who cannot participate in the activities will nonetheless know how to connect and get involved in activities at national level and start their own projects, for example, through the Youth in Action program of the European Commission, as Oran has mentioned. So there is, nonetheless, I agree that there is sometimes a real problem of that the brightest students end up taken by the institutions. I think that's a more general problem of the Roma community and the policies towards Roma youth and students. But at the same time, I'm sure that this needs to be addressed in its proper level, and that is national level, not necessarily at European level. I think, as I said, we see the European level as a support, but we cannot replace at European level, even less at the level of the Council of Europe, what needs to be done at the national level. Otherwise, I appreciate, I think we do have, what the first speaker has said, we do have to make more efforts in terms of disseminating the Roma Youth Action Plan at national level, and I hope that in the coming weeks and months you will be able also to have this in your countries through the internet and in the languages that are more accessible than English, because I do agree that English is indeed very limitative as a communication language. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is my third attempt to provide a summary of this session. Mr. Hussein mentioned that it would be very useful to involve the Roma youth component into the decade and into the EU framework for national Roma strategies, and that Roma youth policies should be such that participation of the young Roma is reflected in the society. So I can provide an exclusive announcement. We are negotiating very seriously with the Decade Trust Fund and some other organizations to organize a large festival next year where we would invite young people from all the countries participating in the decade and a large number of observers. I'm very pleased that today I had an opportunity to moderate this session in which, sorry, I'm so nervous, it's killing me. Thank you very much for the attention.